some of the greatest talk show hosts around, the controversial ones. The talk, not just talk, we're substance. Mrs. Barbara Gludon was supposed to be here with us. She suddenly fell by the wayside. Antoinette Horton as well.
Fell ill. Let's be politically correct.
And
invited a number of talk show hosts tonight. Got a number of confirmations. However, on the day, a number of them have called and said they won't be able to make it. One particular talk show host's wife was told that the program was not of the caliber that she,
wanted
expected,
to endorse.
and she doesn't think that the hosts of this program are of the intellectual capacity to host her husband. So he hasn't made it either.
But we're saved by those who have braved the storm. Winston Witter, Baba Tunde, back with us again. I hear he has a little more fire in his wire to bring. And we're joined by, boy, I tell you, columnist, man of all things in media, John Maxwell.
All right, so we're going to talk tonight.
Simone,
yes,
we should point out, if I'm correct, Mr. Maxwell, you are the first official host of a talk show in this country.
Well, of the modern kind of talk show. I mean, they had sort of advice shows before, but the public affairs, no holds barred, daily talk show.
All right.
Okay.
Should we just go right ahead, or are we going to break? We're going to go right ahead, all right? We're going to invite your calls tonight, and we will have a lot of time for them on 9293971 and 9202033. A lot of people called last week, Rodney, asking us to repeat last week's program or to have another like it. The response is so overwhelming that we thought we'd have a part 2, secured our guests, and then this is what happens. But we're going to invite Mr. Maxwell, who, Rodney, you mentioned as one of the first talk show hosts in Jamaica, to comment on how you think the particular phenomena talk show hosts have gone in our country, what direction you think they're taking, if you're pleased to see how it has progressed over the years. But first, let me just read one particular letter that we got via email from a listener to last week's show. It says, Baba and Mutti mean this country absolutely no good. Personal, unkind, and tasteless criticism will get us nowhere. When will they realize this? Please ask them what else they can do to contribute to nation and community building. It goes on to state that Barbara is an apologist for the government. Antoinette screams too much. I don't listen to power, thus have stopped listening to Ronnie. Mr. Gladstone is in quotes, Hughes can be much at times. Joseph, Patrick, and Stephen are informative and worth listening to. I don't listen to Franklin. Bev and Tony are also informative. They also provide more international perspectives, thus exposing the listening public to other views. That's from one listener to last week's program. I'm going to give you a chance to comment, Mr. Witter, but let's start with you, Mr. Maxwell. Talk shows in Jamaica serve a purpose, or just there to, is it pure chat, as our program says this week, or do they really serve a purpose in this country?
I think that none of them is entirely useless, although some come pretty close.
Would you care to say which ones?
No, we can find out later if you want, but I can tell you why I think so.
Yes, please.
Because I think that certainly when I started Public Eye, it started as a journalistic project. And now I think that talk shows are more part of the entertainment scene rather than attempting to help people. But I feel that journalists are the people's deputies in the first line of defense of people's rights. And we owe certain obligations to them.
But in saying that, Mr. Maxwell, what has been and what continues to be your obligation?
My obligation.
Yeah, as a journalist.
As a journalist.
Yeah, because we tend to categorize talk show hosts in some ways as journalists. They're put generally under that.
They're playing a sort of journalistic function. I would prefer that they played more of a journalistic function. But since some of them are not really journalists, it's difficult for them to do that. But basically, my feeling is that the function of the talk show is to tell people what's happening, because news is about survival. People need information to live, to survive, to make up their minds, to vote, to take their children to school, to, whatever.
And in that vein, do you think then that you also have a duty to censor what, since you are then the conduit through which all this information should be going, or one of, do you think then that at some point you censor your information from a personal point of view, you stop and say, well, this might be good for the country. Let me not.
The only thing that was censored on public eye was indecent language and libelous statements. Right? And, because you have the 9-second delay, people were not really aware most of the time why you were cutting off somebody, but somebody would phone you up. And there are certain people who did this as a practice. I don't know if they're still doing it. And in the middle of something, they just sort of start to do a whole of a bad or they said that Mr. X is so and so and so and so. You have to cut him off because, you can't say that.
All right, let's welcome Ian Boyne to the program.
Welcome to Uncensored. Thank you so much.
The host of Profile.
For being here with us. Let me follow up with a question at Mr. Maxwell. A statement which you made. Now, a lot of our talk show hosts are not journalists. They're lawyers. They're people occupied to different professions, but they have this all-important role. Do you think that is a problem? Do you think we need more journalists on the air doing this sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think that what is happening is that the employers and managements are getting away with unskilled labor. And part of it is because they don't want to pay the journalists properly.
Unskilled labor, you call it?
Yeah, it's unskilled labor. When you hear people making comments that are quite obviously in contempt of court or libelous, and it is obvious also that they don't even know that they're doing that. That's what I mean by unskilled labor.
Let me ask you to comment, Mr. Witter. Unskilled labor, Mr. Maxwell calls it.
To the extent that
I don't say that all of them are,
Yeah, but to the extent that you have mentioned that, for instance, some lawyers are involved in the media field or the field of journalism, then you are bringing in another set of individuals who are themselves not considered journalists by us. And to the extent that we look at our work, then we would have to consider whether or not these individuals are true to the profession, the rules which govern us, the attitudes which we must resolve ourselves to. And I suppose that is what John is speaking about.
But this would bring me to a question posed to all our panelists this evening. In the event of a lawyer hosting a show and then being in some ways unskilled, what about a politician who becomes a host to a talk show? One prime example is Reverend Twaits, Deacon Twaits. No,
he was not a politician when he became.
But
he succeeded me as public guy.
But the reality is, he still hosts a show today.
You're confusing the issue.
No,
you are confusing the issue.
Colonel Charles as well. Then, if you would want then to take an example of someone who was already in politics.
Okay.
How objective do you think
that person
politician can be?
That you have a political opinion doesn't mean that you're not objective. That is one of the things that people used to accuse me of, because I ran for the PNP against Mr. Seaga in 1972. People used to say I was PNP. The trouble is that I used to get into just as many fights with the PNP as with the JLP. And but this thing still follows you around, and it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't, because some people don't listen to the facts. But that's not the point. The point is that everybody, there are very few eunuchs in journalism. Everybody that I know has some political opinion. They vote for a certain party. And so to expect them to be politically innocent is ridiculous.
But what you expect them, what would be said then of you, Mr. Maxwell?
People have said all sorts of things about me.
But then, have you successfully, you think, separated your political preference from your journalism?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't think it is correct for you to ask him that question.
I can ask him.
I don't mind.
It is better you
Why, Mr. Witter?
Why do you think so, Winston?
Because it is a sense in which there are individuals who may be thinking something of John as they have written their thoughts. And John
is being given the opportunity to rectify that.
It doesn't matter how many times John speaks.
He hasn't spoken on this
Wait,
program.
no. He has spoken in every place that you can find it about his condition.
Tell you what, you want to say something about it, or would you rather let
say something about what? I have absolutely no. I'm not bashful about telling people that I'm a socialist.
All right, you're not. Hold on. In the 70s, one thing. Even to this day, as a columnist, people then align you in the same way. I'm asking you, how do you take it?
Propaganda. In the 60s, I go back a long way. In the 60s, I had the distinction of having my paper. I was editor of Public Opinion, which was supposedly PNP. It helped to start the paper. I had my paper and I was editor of it, torn up in the House of Representatives by Edwin Allen and ripped up in the NEC by N.W. Manley in the same week or the same month, I can't remember, right? So, I'm prepared to take the rough with the smooth. I just hope everybody else knows.
May I ask a question? Have you read John Maxwell's response to the Governor General?
No, I haven't.
And his statements regarding Seaga? It came in, was it 2 Sundays ago or 3 Sundays ago?
Yeah, 2 Sundays ago.
You should read that one.
You
should read it, boy. Yes, you're sitting here and hold on. You've asked Simone if she read it.
Yes, I have read it. And it answers your question about the man as to whether the man who is sitting over there is a journalist.
Right,
the fact that he could criticize on a
well, he criticized, but at the same time, at the end of the criticism, you could never very well say that he was disrespectful or out of order to the Governor General. You just have to read it.
But all right, let us then.
In effect, what he was really suggesting is that the individual who has been spoken of, it seems to him that enough focus has not been given to the history of the individual, and whether or not, if you fail to do so, are you correct in doing what you do to put him on top as what?
Well,
prophet?
Well, all right. The history of Winston Witter. Do you consider yourself a journalist?
Oh, yes.
Okay. How many occasions have you probably found yourself, even after a program finishes, saying, boy, me this the caller that's still today, me this 5 callers are, me just in our mood,
No, because I don't get into the dissing thing.
I think issues are broad than that. Hold on, Ian. Hold on. Don't make Winston.
Because the word on the street is probably that your style is to this.
No,
you know what I mean?
There's a larger issue involving Winston's work, and that is, to what extent is Winston interested in serious analytical work, or is he largely interested in theatrics and histrionics?
And ratings.
And many times when I listen to Winston, because I have known him for such a long time, and I know the kind of depth that is possible from Winston, I am not associating the Babatunde, whom I'm hearing on the ear, with Winston Witter.
Do you have a problem with the Babatunde that you're hearing
on the ear? Not because of the language, not because of the way he communicates. I think that Winston is an extremely effective communicator. And I think that he has used the language of the people very effectively. I don't think that one should
castigate him for that.
Right. He uses that very, very well. And I do not accept the view that our language is inferior, and therefore the use of it on the media is a point of criticism. My concern is with the ideas. There are things. Winston would tend to be simplistic on issues. Critical issues. On important issues that I know that Winston has read too much to take these kinds of simplistic views. Give a case in point, Mr. Ward. I haven't heard Winston in a little while, but there are times, for example, when economic issues would come up, and someone would call and would be blasting the government over this or that. And Winston would understand the kinds of constraints that the global economy imposes on Jamaica. He would understand the kind of political economy we have, and therefore the very limited range of choices. But you would never get an understanding. Winston would pander to the people
would play on the ignorance of people rather than pointing out some of the mitigating factors.
My critique of Winston and Wilmot Perkins is basically that they're treating the air, which is public property, right, as a sort of theater to demonstrate their own skills. And
I have a greater problem with them because
what they're doing is that because there is a lot of entertainment value in conflict for conflict's sake, there is a tremendous amount of what, in my view, comes down to the purely vulgar abuse and propaganda bashing.
Yes.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's not getting anybody anywhere.
Why Winston is culpable, John, is that Winston is intellectual sharper than Mutty.
Hold on. Allow Winston.
Mutty is not as informed as Witter.
Comment on this, Winston. You hear it coming from left and right.
Simplistic,
What you say?
It's not
vulgar
left
abuse,
nor right.
theater.
It's either left or right. It's either coming from left. Both gentlemen are talking just about the same thing in terms of their understanding of the process and their analysis of that process of just perhaps one individual, but I suppose that they listen to others.
And there's no...
I think that there is a sense in which the gentlemen have not looked at what is the status of the society in which we are. Do you have what we call an elite or an elitist section? Do we have a broad majority of individuals who themselves are not elites? Therefore, to what extent, when we argue, we are arguing in respect to the objectives established by the elites, as distinct from the needs of the large majority of our people who are not among the elites.
Accurate information and contextualization.
The information is out, and I'm going to ask I'm going to ask you.
Is it theatrics or not? That's the question.
It's not theatrics.
Theatrics is important.
It's not theatrics.
But there's a way to combine theatrics.
I tell you that.
With useful information.
They may listen and hear some things which they establish as theatrics. Listen, it's been a long time I have not been to the little theater. It's been long.
You don't need to go. You don't need to go.
Hold on.
I want to ask the question. I want to ask you the question. I need to ask the question. Not interview you. Is there anything that you can tell us about the success of India as a third world developing country?
Why, Mr.
What is it?
Why?
Well, because he spoke a while ago about the market and about the nature. About the nature of our economic management. And that there are those of us who look at those things. Wait a moment.
Winston.
In respect to other third world countries that have been able to make the success, is he aware of this? And to what extent
we're getting back to it. Hold on, Ian. We need to take this caller. Caller?
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You have a comment for Mr. Witter?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Not only for Mr. Witter, but I think that journalists or the announcers in general have sort of more added their personal views and use those personal views to impose upon people instead of taking that objective and listening point of view that they should take to a person's comment, because I think that is basically what they are paid for. In the case of Mr. Witter, to me, Mr. Witter just goes way out on that limb at all times. Your programs, each and every one of your programs, at times does a lot of good, but other times just does a whole heap of bad.
When you say
what's the bad that it does?
Which program are you talking about now?
Winston's program.
But
what's the bad that it does, caller?
In the case of, take for example, Mr. Witter. Mr. Witter has this approach to callers where he is just the king of the hill when he is talking to his callers, and I don't think that is a tone that a journalist should.
When you say he acts like he's the king of the hill, what do you mean?
Mr. Witter doesn't take that.
Confidence is a good thing. What you tell us what you mean?
It's more than that.
Let me ask him tell me what it is.
All right.
Exactly.
Listen to this. When you are paid to take the person's call and analyze the situation and say, this is a suggestion I have for you. I can see if it works. Am I right or am I right?
Well, hold on. Let me ask Winston. Are you paid to take people's call and analyze what they're saying and deal with it as the caller?
The function of the talk show.
Well, what?
You allow people to speak whatever they want.
What is Winston Witter's role as a talk show?
If it is, I allow people to speak. It is. We're talking about a democracy. We're talking about justice, are we not? So that the individual wants to say something about what he or she thinks. Say it. No, if I have a particular view, I will give my view. If I have a particular analysis, I will give my analysis.
And you don't think
it does not prevent the individual, not at all. It does not prevent the individual from saying, listen, I disagree with you. I say so or say so. So nothing wrong with that.
Caller, you've heard Mr. Witter's response.
Well, I heard Mr. Witter's response.
Are you sold? Do you believe what he's saying?
Not for a second, because every day my radio is tuned to Mr. Witter.
But you're listening to him. So there's obviously something there that is pulling you to his station every day.
But sir, may I tell him this? Hello, sir. Sir, may I tell you this?
Yes, sir.
I am not responsible for answering the telephones.
All right, sir.
Somebody answers that telephone and passes the calls to me.
But all right, Winston.
What did he say directly?
Yeah, really. But he may think that I'm the one who will pick up and say, I won't talk to this. Hang up. I'll talk to you.
Let me give him one question, John. Let me give him one question. Hold up one, John. One question. So, irrespective of who makes the call, Winston, when you get it, don't you think you at least have a responsibility to exercise tact and diplomacy and not be loud and aggressive and deal with people anyhow you feel like dealing with them?
When I am aggressive and loud, you may come with the history of that or the report of that and let me know about it.
But hold on. The Winston Witter on television. Let me ask you, the Winston on television is very different from the Winston on radio.
Verified now.
You know, I may say this. Hold on.
Let's relieve this.
What I think you
hold on,
Thanks for your call.
Yes.
Thanks very much for your call.
I'd like to make my point now. Winston, just a moment. Because this is a point I wanted to make. Much earlier when you said, when you're talking about democracy and sort of inferring that, you know, you have to speak in a certain way because we are dealing with a certain kind of people. No, I believe that this is an apartheid society. I've said so several times, right? But that does not mean that I'm going to speak up or speak down to anybody. And what gets me with you right now is that when you are performing on your talk show, you're not behaving. Yes, because it's not what he's doing right now. Is Winston Witter with his degrees.
With all due respect,
right?
You are much more calm.
Not only that, but he's talking to the same people. So what I want to know, what is the difference? And the difference, it seems to me, is the ratings. Right?
Have you been listening to my program?
Hold on, 1 second, Winston. We have a hello, caller.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is this
Mrs. Tortello?
Mrs. Tortello. All right. I just wanted to take the time out to welcome you online here to Uncensored.
Very much, sir.
And we're coming right back to you. We're just going to a break. All right. So
hang on the line. We'll be right back on Uncensored. Don't go away.
Okay, we're back here on Uncensored. The temperature keeps climbing. Mrs. Tortello.
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't need to say much for you. You can say it all for yourself.
That's for sure. I agree with that caller 150%.
Tell us why.
Why? Because these talk show hosts, right? They cut me off most of the time, except for Willie, right?
That includes Willie. That includes Willie Perkins.
That does not include Willie.
Okay.
Right? Because Willie I can talk to, but Willie talks so much he can't hear what I'm saying to him.
You mean willy-nilly?
Right? But Winston is completely out on space one. You talk to him, he gets very obnoxious, very rude, he cuts you off, he's very uptight. They take these shows as if it belongs to them. It does not belong to them.
Winston, you think the program belongs to
On
you?
these shows, the ratings, right?
I just been a long time she has not spoken to me,
Right.
And I have no control over that at all. To be frank with you, my dear, if you call me anytime, I talk to you.
Don't bother make any excuses, right?
Excuses? I beg your pardon, mother.
Excuse because
I beg your pardon.
you use it very short, uptight, and possibly have to cut off in no time.
Possibly because you two just said a while ago that you were cut off by me.
Don't try to be a sweetheart on this show.
I am not being a sweetheart to you. Let us talk truth.
Right? I am talking truth. You talk to the people of the roots people. When I said that to Perkins, he don't understand what I mean. Who you mean by roots people? Yes, I hear you in the markets. I hear you with people who are down into the roots, into the ground, right? You're speaking to them, but you impose on them what you are thinking. You are not allowing them to tell you when they come on what they're thinking, except village talk. That's not village talk. Do you know that St. Anne's Bay Hospital don't have any water or any ice? Do you tell them that? Do you tell them that our electric bill is 3 times the price now? No, every day we go over this business and we do what is happening with this owner, what is happening with this. The whole place is falling apart and nobody is talking to these people who are feeling hardship.
So, Mrs. Tortello.
It's happening to Jamaica. You know what's happening to Jamaica?
Hold on, Mrs. Tortello. Mrs. Tortello.
Yes, sir.
May I ask you, is it only Winston that you have this problem with?
No, but I think Mrs.
Willie
Tortello,
is-
excuse me, I think Mrs.
Willie is
Tortello has a
just
point.
When you go on to Willie, but wait a minute.
You have a problem with John Maxwell?
No,
He doesn't have a talk show.
Quite.
I don't talk to John Maxwell.
Yeah, but when he used to have one, and he's still very much in the media. And
Maybe I was a baby at that time.
So, Mrs. Tortello, let me ask, in effect, what you're saying is that talk show hosts, let me ask you,
No,
do you
whose
think
show
they're
I
doing...
never go on and who is the most gentleman of the show? Mr. Sweet. And it's not because I love Mr. Sweet. Mr. Sweet has a beautiful voice, right?
All right, but Mrs. Tortello, I think you have a point because my
Sweet
feeling...
has a gentleman.
hold on, Mrs. Tortello, hold on.
But madam, I get you that. Willie's all over me. And I'll fight with him tomorrow if he hears what I'm saying now. Because I asked him, why you don't come on tonight? Tell me about his voice hurting him. How come his voice wasn't hurting him?
all right,
Because he knows that you'll be on tonight, but he's not on.
Mrs. Tortello.
Don't you want the ratings to go up or you want them to sit down?
Mrs. Tortello. Mr. Maxwell is agreeing with you, Go ahead, Mr. Maxwell.
What did you say a while ago? That John is agreeing with her?
Why shouldn't I?
Yes, because there's a togetherness between the PNP and the JLP.
I'm not a member of the PNP.
Hold on.
He did a beautiful job.
Hold on, Mrs. Tortello. Mr. Maxwell is going to make his point.
Everybody has got to be labeled. Everybody got to be PNP or JLP.
No, but she's not a sister.
I hear who she is. I said she has a point.
Okay.
I tell you,
I have a
Hold on, Mrs. Tortello.
What I'm saying to you.
the unactive JLP and they don't give me my membership up to now. That's 3 years ago.
Hold on, Mrs. Tortello.
Mr. Seaga, I am not a member of no party. I'm a loose cannon. I say what I want.
All right, Mrs. P, hold on. Mr. Maxwell wants to make a point.
Perhaps say that you're a loose howitzer, but
Have you spoken about the GCT 40 million?
What?
Winston.
Have you spoken about the GCT 40 million?
Oh,
Winston.
me?
no, Winston, but that is just.
No, just ask the question. That's all I ask. I'm not me. Can I ask the question? That's all I ask.
No, but you are just insinuating. The
Leave
point
him
is that
alone. Leave him alone. Leave him. I can manage
what
it.
I know you can, but
Hold
what
on,
I'm saying to you,
hold
what
on.
I'm saying
Let
to you
Mr.
is,
Maxwell.
let us discuss this business because, as the point I made originally is what she's talking about. It's the people's business is supposed to be talking about, and I feel,
Hold on, Mrs. Tortello.
and I feel that the people's business is not getting enough attention because people have their agendas up front.
They're making little gods of them.
John, the fact of the matter is that talk show hosts have a right to their opinions. Talk show
Of course,
hosts
they have a right to their
But where do
opinion.
we draw the
But
line,
there's this view, there's this regular view.
But hold
that the
on.
talk show hosts are just there to listen to what
but hold on, Mr. Boy. Mr. Boy.
They have a legitimate right to express their opinion.
But you don't
They are
bring...
different from
Hold on,
reporters.
Mr. Boy.
They-
Are you saying that you're supposed to
Yeah.
bring your
Of
personal
course.
opinion to the
You are
program?
talking- precisely.
So if you
As long as
happen
you
to
make
be...
that clear,
Hold
of
on.
course.
If you happen to be an active member of the PNP...
Yes.
Do you bring
As
it
far as
to
you are
the floor?
concerned, if somebody calls and says, boy, the government now go out with nothing. If your personal opinion is them doing everything, then you tell them straight off the bat.
Every
No, they're doing fine.
There's this false notion
Yes
of
or no?
objectivity.
Hold on. Yes or no, Mr.
You
Boy?
can't
person
ask
must
that
be
kind of
fair.
question.
You see what you
The
do?
No.
person has his right to express
Well,
his
I
opinion.
can't-
I'm asking about
The lady
personal
should have
bias.
to say something. The lady
Hold on,
should have to
Mrs.
say
Tortello. Hold on. I'm talking
Where
about
does fairness end, though,
personal
Mr.
bias.
Boyne? Where does fairness end? Because
Witter deals with a lot of things like Germany.
You want to tell the last figure there?
I do not believe
I can tell you where to go and get the last figure.
I believe in God. You know how
Anyway,
I
but I'm not into that kind of thing at all, because I don't even discuss
No, but the point is,
You're
that
getting into nitty-gritties. I am saying you have to do the people's work and not boost yourself.
My dear, that is being done. You just need to listen.
You know, I'm just, that's another issue. The media, we boast about giving the people what they want. Do we really know? And I mean, if
we can know, because
judgments. And these judgments are subjective.
Of course, the judgments are subjective, but they must be driven by what the people say. You were around when people called up and put on Trevor Monroe's ex-wife and some other lady one day in 1974 who talked about the conditions of domestic helpers. And that led to a conversation which lasted for 8 months or thereabouts, which in fact led directly to the national minimum wage. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about development, because what we're doing is that the dialogue was the people's concern. It was very hot. You remember it led to people buying telephone locks.
Are these things happening today? Where are the talks? What kind of...
I'm saying that they are not.
In fairness to Winston, he deals with a lot of issues that are pertinent to people, that are burning. We might disagree with how he deals with them.
All day long.
I don't believe that dealing with these little bitty things, dealing with them in little bitty ways is not advancing anything.
A man calls me last night, Miss T, can you believe there's no water in the St. Anne's Bay Hospital? I said, well, you're joking. Not even ice, right? These are things but if they could call a radio station or talk show host and tell him that, so Jamaica know what is happening.
Mr. Tortello, we thank you for your participation tonight. We're going to see if we can...
Please ask the producer to
have done that.
Thank you so much.
But you see, one of the things that doesn't happen in this country is that we don't try to find out why things happen. We look at people demonstrating on television tonight at the Golden Age home, where they have chopped the number of staff and the food is bad and things like that. And nobody has gone to inquire why that has happened. One of the reasons
that would be the case with the Mobius.
It's just all of these things, and because there are people on the road. The reason why, because the mental hospital cannot hold them, and they can't be found. Arms house space to use an old word, okay? But nobody has gone back to find why that has happened. And part of the reason why it's happened is because the government has bought this globalization ridiculous nonsense, has chopped down the tax base of this country by reducing taxes in order to buy votes, in my view, right? And has gone for this cheap popularity among the elite. And we are unable to provide a government which deals with the needs of the masses.
Fundamental issues.
And this is the point.
And here is my significant disappointment with Winston, because Winston is one of those educated persons in media who are familiar with these kinds of data, and he's not using his media.
Hold on, Winston.
Hello, welcome to Uncensored.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I wish we would leave this issue. But the more tantalizing. We need to deal with
We're going to come back to it.
It might not be as sexy as some of the things that we're dealing with.
Hold on, caller. Hold on.
But we need to deal with this fundamental issue.
Hold on. The question I would put to you is this. How is it that in the same vein then Ian Boyne says, well, you have the intellect, the depth, the knowledge, all this to bring to... On TV, the same Winston Witter suddenly transforms and the radio has a new Winston Witter. Is it because you believe that it's...
ignorance?
Isn't that seriously... like a strategy at work? How come the TV don't get you?
May I ask a question of you both? You have been connected to the university, haven't you? And so have you, both of you. Can you give me a report about the books that I have read on my program?
What is
Hold on. When I say the books I've read, the Oxford Companion to Philosophy by Ted Onderlich. I have read The Notion of the Market by a philosopher. Wait a moment.
What is the point?
No, not only quoting the book, but also contextualizing.
So it is a market.
Oh, you mean if I've done that?
When people
call
When people call about social problems,
so it's market.
it is a market to what is happening in the real world. The political parties buying into the neoliberal view of
hold on. We're not going into an economic conversation. Hold on. We're not going into an economic conversation.
So an ordinary caller on his program.
Winston, is it marketing? The TV strategy versus the radio strategy. Where's the journalism in that?
Well, the notion of market a while ago has nothing at all to do with the broadcasting entity. It has to do with the wide
Winston, don't joke. But look
I'm
here.
not joking.
Look here, Winston.
I'm not.
I'm asking
I
you a
did not
simple question. I'm asking you a
I
simple
didn't say
question.
joking.
Hold on.
I'm talking
Hold
about
on.
the work which I've done and that I continue to do.
Winston,
Let's take this.
you don't bring the same atmosphere
Rodney, let's
to
take the call.
TV as you do to radio.
Let's take the call.
You don't.
Hang on. Let's take the call. Hello, good night. Welcome to Uncensored.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question to pose to Mr. Witter, and I have been privileged.
Just a moment, sir. Sir, let me tell you this. We just spoke about two notions of a society which we have in this country.
Hello?
Hang on one sec.
We have the elite and we have below the elite. The question is, where is it do we find the people that we need to speak to?
I get it now. So the elite watch the TV.
Are you
And the masses listen to the radio.
Are you suggesting to me that, for instance, since you lecture at the university, you must only lecture at the university? You must not talk to. You must not
Winston,
talk
are you telling me
But
that?
Winston,
No,
you strike a balance. You strike a balance. And the idea is you obviously have three-piece suit talk for TV. Good. And shorts and t-shirt talk for radio.
I see, Rodney, that if Mr. Witter were to come across like some radio, not a lot of people would listen to him.
Precisely.
That's the problem.
Why not?
Because it's not drama.
So does Wilmot Perkins do it? What is it then? That Wilmot Perkins has a different type of presentation. What, his listenership is gone?
No.
Ronnie Twist has it. Barbara Gludan has it.
It is communication.
So what is the point?
There is a particular segment that Winston appeals to, and Babatunde appeals to, and he has done well in that market. Moti has his market, has his niche. Barbara has a niche.
But you miss it. So what happened when you get to the TV?
Sensibly enough. It's a different audience, and there's nothing wrong in adapting your message to the media.
You adapt the message to the media.
No,
And as a result, you know what happens? Do you know what happens? What happens sometimes is that when people see Winston on TV,
Yes.
and decide that, okay, fine, here is Winston Witter. Very calm, very
What Winston is
suave.
showing is his
What have you.
versatility.
All of a sudden, hold on.
But why do you say
Do you
TV?
realize,
Why do you say
Winston?
TV alone?
Winston, I will tell you why.
Have I not been a visitor? I'm a visitor to your station.
Hold on, Winston.
Hold on, I'm a visitor here.
No, hold on.
And I have not spoken patois here. Have you said anything about that?
Let me tell you
You want
why.
me to talk patois now?
Winston,
You want me to talk patois
No
now?
problem, Mr.
Oh,
Witter.
let me
It's
tell you
not a
why.
problem.
Oh, bless you.
let me
Not a
tell you why.
problem.
You know why? Because when,
Mr. Boy made a point at the
Mr. Boy,
very beginning.
when Winston is on TV, he's interviewing public officials 9 times out of 10.
So you're saying that he
Hold on.
disrespects the people.
No. What is very strange is that Winston seems to be almost passe when he has these big time officials in front of him. Yet, all of passive, fine. And all of a sudden, on radio, he's gone. And the question is, what happens to Winston Witter? And that, not necessarily the same kind of language per se, but the kind of in-depth reaching out. That is where we're going.
Well, you know what?
Hold on, Winston. Let's let the caller.
No, I have to say something about that.
No, Winston.
That's a bad analysis you're going on with.
You don't want to do it.
That's a bad analysis.
Well, go ahead. You tell me.
I just made my point. So that's a bad analysis.
You haven't made the point.
All right.
You made a statement.
We have somebody waiting on
What is the analysis?
We have somebody.
Let's take the call. Hello,
Adapting
welcome.
the styles to the different media.
Thank you for holding for so long. Go ahead and make your point.
Mr. Witter.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to
One of the things that I
survive.
you is that you have a diverse personality, you have different personas which you apply. One of the things I don't like about when you do on your program is when you tell people, and you're not going to tell me that you don't do it. I've heard it over and over. It cracks people up. They find it quite funny when I don't. When you tell a person that they have a dirty, careless mind.
So what's wrong with that language?
No, but that's vulgar
Not
abuse.
necessarily language, but how can you tell somebody that?
Vulgar abuse.
That you invite and...
It is vulgar abuse.
It is not vulgar. You tell
It is vulgar abuse.
all of a sudden you tell her,
How do you find somebody as a...
it is said, what is what? It's
worthwhile intention.
Allow
Well, let me ask-
If I use the Queen's English to say essentially to communicate the same thought, is that vulgar? Is it vulgarity in the
It is
language?
vulgar abuse.
the person.
Whatever language you
Hello,
use.
sir.
Okay, can I ask you, hold on. In what kind of
And you-
situations? Because if I understand if somebody's going to call you and tell you a string of bad words on the air, how you
No,
can
nobody has
get
ever done that. It's really...
in what kind of situations?
The conversation is there going off and some things and they're carrying on and they give a dirty careless man or whatever. I mean, that is not
He's
God.
bringing the man back into line, he's bringing the woman back into
So
line.
you just said Mr.
That is
Boy?
nonsense.
I don't see that. I don't see that.
It's
So I may also say with this particular one that the analysis is poor.
Perhaps the analysis is poor. What I want to
When I
ask,
say poor analysis, it
what
might
is the
very well
difference?
be a situation in which somebody is making a point about something. And it
No, but what is the
considered to be,
difference between
it is
Winston?
considered to be stupidity.
What is the difference between
and then it
Winston?
is said in that manner, in a manner which is said elsewhere.
Yes.
And
I
then
understand.
communicate to
Hold on, Mr. Maxwell. Let me just cut off the call. Before you go,
Hold on there, just one other thing. One of the things that I noticed, a lot of persons have said it before, they will not have it in their offices being played because it's not what he does. I don't know. This is the perception, but I don't go with that. Is that they don't want it to be in the office because it's not fit for office.
Do you
That's
listen
a
though?
contempt for the
Hold
blind.
on.
listen.
Do you listen?
That is nonsense.
Then why?
That I know a lot of persons do.
Then why do you call and complain?
But
Why do you? I mean, if you listen to Mr. Why?
for everything, there's a little bad in every good and there's a good in every little.
And you think that Mr. Witter is overridingly good? He's doing more good than bad?
A little bad inside some of most of what he does.
Let me ask you another question before we go. Theatrics, does that play a part in why you listen? Do you like the drama? Do you like the whole theatrics of it? Is that a part of it?
Quite frankly, yes. I find it quite entertaining most of the time.
Yeah,
I guess
one
that's
of
the
the
point,
things you
eh?
must remember is
That's
that
why
Thank
most
you.
persons listen.
one of the things you must
Thank you for your call.
remember. One of the things you need to remember is that some people watch motor racing in the hope
entertaining.
that they will see a crash. Right? That's part of it. Yes, we are fascinated in this country by bad news. And this is part of the attraction of these guys, and I know it. But the point is that it's much harder.
You're surprised I'm not coming on hard.
It is much harder to do. I am not talking about the Jamaican language. I'm talking about the abuse. To tell somebody that they have a
Don't
mind
Don't
is
be careless, mind, Mr. Boy.
There aren't persons with that kind of mind.
abuse.
But John, if you tell a person, you cannot use excellent language to really insult people. I've done that in
But
Japan.
it should be offensive.
What is insulting?
You know what
if I were to bring some of
Yeah.
John's columns, and with his mastery of the language, I have seen John put down some people. Some really awful with excellent language. Why is Winston Witter worse?
You know what I say about this court?
You know the subject.
What I say about this court? You do not have the evidence.
Hold on,
Where
Mr.
are the
Boy.
tapes?
Mr. Boy.
Where are the tapes? We are going to a court. Where are the tapes? Where are the tapes? My friend technical, where are the tapes?
Gentlemen, we are going to a
You are a journalist. Where are the tapes?
We are going to a call, but
Where are the tapes?
right before it, I want to say, this is not a court.
I don't think
It's
we
better
can-
than
It's not a court, I beg
Hello,
your
good
pardon.
evening, caller.
Good evening.
You have a comment for...
I do. I'm calling in defense of Mr. Witter.
Go right ahead.
Right? The analyses that have passed before me, I agree with him that they are totally biased and grossly uninformed. Let me tell you something. I'm a former student of Mr. Witter and a student of political science at UWI. And we are in a capitalist-driven world at this time. People out there are suffering, both financially and mentally. What Mr. Witter services is this gap which people can now yearn, look into. They want to hear something, want to hear a solution, want to hear a brother. Not somebody who's going to issue out instructions to them as to where to go and how to do it. Mr. Witter has a type of personality which is extremely versatile. And mind you, he's not marketing anything. If Mr. Witter switches from radio to television, he has a forte which he has to fit. And this is what we're overlooking. Mr. Witter has a versatile personality. He's a seasoned journalist, right? And we must look into that. People are yearning for answers, somebody who can listen to them, not to be condescending, but somebody who acts as a brother or as a father, who can listen to their problems and carefully analyze and give a proper answer.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that you'll agree that the guy who comes in on Thursday nights and Friday nights on the same station is doing exactly the same job. It's a kind of phobia as far as I'm concerned. It has nothing to
Kind
do.
of what? Phobia.
Caller.
Elaborate on that, Mr. Maxwell.
I don't know.
Thank you, caller.
John, you
Caller from
You saw what he read, what he wrote about the GG. You read it?
Always read
When you said I don't understand.
Because we're not dealing, you see what this gentleman wants is somebody who's going to deal with magic. What I want is somebody who's going to look at what is going on and analyze and help people to make their minds up. What he's doing is acting as a cheerleader for various little factions and sections. And all you're getting is a whole heap of noise in the society. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. Nobody knows which way to go because there's no leadership. And they won't even say we don't have the room to discuss these things because what you are doing is simply abusing the Prime Minister, and that brings even people like me onto his side, right? Because you are just, when you abuse somebody, you know, when you leave the rationality behind, you want to defend the person because this is an unfair attack.
Abusing the Prime
All right.
And abusing other people.
Hold on, let me hear Mr. Whitman's response to that.
What I really need, because I think we're about 10 minutes away.
Correct.
And I'd like to really go back to Boyne's point.
But I'd like
The point
I want you to respond to what Mr. Maxwell is saying, though. He's just made a very strong allegation. He's saying that.
What
allegation?
You mean what allegation?
That you abuse the Prime Minister.
He may appear as though it's Prime Minister, but other people all around the place that perhaps you might not genuflect to. You may not give them the kind of May we get some help? I want to get some help from Mr. You're going to be polite.
Yes, Winston.
The extent to which, Boyne, for instance, we look at the new millennium.
Yes.
And we look
When does the millennium start in your
The
opinion?
new millennium, 2001.
Okay.
He's right on that.
The new millennium, don't be rude.
Yes.
No, I'm asking, to what extent do you perceive that this economy will move even to the level of China or to the level of India? Remember,
The level of China is one of the fastest growing countries in the world.
Am I right? I'm just saying, look at those that are going up.
Yes.
I mean, closer to the United States of America.
What
is it that we
Mr. Maxwell, you realize that we have an economist conversation going on over here.
No, that is what you're on my program.
Hold on.
But then at my level,
This is not Winston's program or profile or is not Mr. Maxwell's program.
In English.
No.
You want to bring down the discussion to the lowest common denominator.
No, I don't want to have the Boyne factor running it.
No, it's not.
We're not here to discuss economy.
may I say something?
I want to get into the practice of journalism by true journalists.
You know, I say something to you.
May I say something?
Go ahead, Mr. Witter.
The point about journalism is that one should be able to speak about economics so that the ordinary person can understand every word you say. That is what we are not doing.
Mr. Boyne.
Not only economics, several issues are
Mr. Boyne and John Maxwell, they have come up with some ideas. Oh yes. Well, Witter has not done his work very well. And these people have done their work very well.
I don't think anybody else
all these individuals, all Winston is asking these individuals now, starting with Mr. Boyne, tell us exactly, how do we get into that process of development in a modern context, having regard to what is called globalization and marketing?
Well, you have not
excuse me,
explained to anybody what globalization is.
Excuse me. To what extent now? I leave the thing. I take up myself away from the elitist concept, the university concept, and get it down to the broad majority to discuss it. When a man, for instance, calls about roadways, bad roadways, bad water supply, bad telephone service.
You don't point to why the government does not have enough funds to do those things. You don't point to the maladjustment
to the parish council.
So we must point out to why it is that, for instance, the Minister of Finance goes abroad to seek 250 million US and did not get it.
But that's what you must explain why. But what you're doing is reducing policy to gossip.
Huh?
You're reducing policy issues to gossip.
Is it
What you need to do
is it gossip we're dealing with now?
I'm
asking you, gentlemen, to explain to people now how we reach these problems.
You mean we can simply say the corruption of the PhD?
No.
Why they can't raise 200?
Let me ask you this.
How do we get out?
If Winston's presentation
how we reach
of
and
the
then how we get
issues,
out?
if his presentation of the issues are supposedly incorrect, what is the way in which Winston should be presenting these
I'm not
things?
saying that his presentation is incorrect. No. I only asked him and Perkins and some of the
Not to trivialize that.
to treat people with respect, to treat their audience with respect, to treat them as adults. You can talk. Everybody in Jamaica understands what I say. I didn't have to use patois. You have to talk to the helpers, right?
But you don't have a problem with the patois aspect of it.
I don't have a problem.
Just
I don't have that problem. We don't. This is not the point. The question is abuse. The question is how you deal with people. The question is whether you respect the fact that the air doesn't belong to you, but it belongs to your constituency that's out there. And that's one of the reasons why, if I may be permitted to say one thing, if you add up all the talk shows together right now, none of them come to how much I had on public 25 years.
All right, hold on a second. Caller. Hello,
Can you imagine? I had to make. Can you imagine?
Hello, caller.
Hello?
Yes, good evening.
John Maxwell.
I just wanted to say, I've been listening, just a few minutes ago. I think the responsibility of the media in Jamaica is particularly important. For one, Jamaicans don't usually seek, the educational lines. They don't usually read and stuff. And they tend to listen and follow and are influenced by whatever they see or hear the prominent announcers say. I think, as Mr. Maxwell said, get the emotion out of it, all right? Or if you can't get the emotion out of it, get your opinion out of it. And if you can suggest a way, create a forum where people can come with ideas, look into new research. Also, there's a moment of time where you're going to be questioning politicians because some of their actions do come into question. But when you're done, you should have a talk show where ideas have surfaced, where people have learned things.
At the end of the day, you should have achieved something.
Right now, all you have is talk shows that are, in some senses, theatrics. And I'm not saying Mr. Babatunde alone, because all of you talk shows do it in somewhere or another.
Sir, may I ask a question of this gentleman? Hello, sir.
Sir.
Do you know Barry Evans?
Yes, I do know Mr. Varish.
Did you hear him speak to me on my program?
No, I didn't.
Do you know Trevor Monroe?
Yes, I know.
Have you heard him speak to me on my program?
What are you saying?
Which except I'm going to call more names. Because I'm saying to you people that I'm on a program for 4 hours. And I speak to individuals about issues. In the same kinds of ways that you are talking about. And it seems to me that the kind of the kind of analysis that I'm getting is that it is not these things that people are looking at. They are looking at some other thing.
Call you, Winston.
Or some other thing.
You can help.
No, but you see,
All right.
Help with
Hold on a second. Caller.
And I don't help.
Hello.
You can contact
I have help.
Caller.
I have help.
You have the information.
I have help.
Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still there.
All right. Thanks very much for.
It's not
Tuning in.
It's not only that you're talking about that you're talking to Trevor Monroe. The people should be able to talk to Trevor Monroe and Barry Evans. You need to integrate. You need to integrate all of these things into one. This is the process that we're talking about.
John,
That is what people are afraid.
John, may I tell you what you might not know? That people are invited in at the station where they sit down. Some of them say they're for half hour, some say for an hour. Our people talking to people who call. This thing is allowed on my program.
Allowed.
If you read it, give you a concrete example.
I know people talk the word.
It's a word that you use. Allowed.
Let me give you a concrete example of the kind of development journalism we're talking about.
Yeah.
Not just because John is here and John has been a mentor of mine, but when you read the John Maxwell column on a Sunday, you get an idea of the kind of work that we need to do as journalists. Maxwell writing simply but elegantly.
You think the Ian Boyne profile is exemplary for those who wish to get
I'm not here to push. Let me talk about John's work. Let me talk about John's work.
Let me ask you that question as a final question.
You have not read.
Would you consider profiles to be in-depth?
By highlighting people who have been successful against the odds, that I provide inspiration to people, that I provide motivation to people. I am not saying that's the only kind of work that must be done. That is a kind of work that must have a part.
Yeah, you have not read John on the
point is that it's not. I have read John. You have read John.
No, I have not read. You go and read that. Yes, he's go and read it. Yes, he's a servant. I said go and read it. But you have the information. I said go and read it. All man can read that.
We're talking about facts. It's not just opinion. It is facts.
And the contextualization.
And they can make up their mind on the basis of facts.
Gentlemen,
what else you think about John?
Let's wrap. Simone, it's been interesting.
It has been.
I frankly believe that those who didn't participate this evening have lost out.
Excellent.
Not been here.
John Maxwell, Winston Witter. It's like a father and son.
Well, like me, Maxwell,
for father and
from 17,
it's what he has learned
from 17.
As we close.
Yes.
I have to
be responsibility for.
Let's look at the situation as it exists in your opinion now, and what we need to do, what talk shows need to do to fulfill the role that is there for them. What more can we do to get more out of it?
We should have less of my bastards controlling the issues.
Separate apart from that.
No, but I think that people need to remember that they are the delegates of the people, just like the politicians are. And we need to treat people with respect. And we need to look after, we have to care for people. I think we have forgotten that part of it. I think we're just out to make a buck, we're out to make a big name and get stardom and all sort of this. We're not doing the work on behalf of the ordinary people. That's what I say.
What about you, Mr. Boyne? What would you have to say? And speak directly to Mr. Witter, who's sitting to your right, who you know.
Repeat the question, what do I have to say about
Yes, what do you think about what we can do to focus talk shows a little more, to have them serve more of a purpose?
I think that because the society is generally geared toward consumerism and geared toward the market, that the media have become victims of this. And because of this incessant urge for ratings, it is going to be very difficult to get the talk show hosts who have to look at the ratings and look at their pay in relation to that. It is going to be very difficult to get them to think of issues beyond their paychecks and beyond their popularity.
Mr. Witter?
I appreciate my erstwhile colleagues' analysis, but I still think that part and parcel of the process is that they must get some more reports and information
listen
about
some more and make.
Yes.
All right, but having sat there for the last hour and listened to the criticism